On the morning of June 6, 1944, over 156,000 Allied soldiers stormed the heavily fortified coastline of Normandy, France. They carried with them every tool of war that modern industry could produce: rifles, submachine guns, pistols, grenades, flamethrowers, and explosives. The men who hit those beaches faced a wall of German steel. Machine gun fire raked the sand, mortar rounds erupted in the surf, and between the landing craft and the bluffs above, there was nothing but open ground and death. The weapons these soldiers carried were the only thing standing between them and annihilation. Every trigger pull, every grenade thrown, every bayonet fixed, it all mattered. This is every infantry weapon used on D-Day, and the role each one played in the largest amphibious invasion in human history. Allied rifles, the backbone of the invasion. M1 Garand. The M1 Garand was the heartbeat of the American infantry on D-Day. It was the first semi-automatic rifle to be standard issued to any military in the world. Chambered in .30-06 Springfield, it fed from an 8-round en-bloc clip and could deliver accurate, rapid fire far faster than any bolt-action rifle on the battlefield. General George S. Patton famously called it the greatest battle implement ever devised. On Omaha and Utah Beach, the Garand gave American soldiers a critical rate of fire advantage over German defenders armed with bolt-action Kar 98K rifles. Its distinctive metallic ping when the clip ejected became one of the most iconic sounds of the Second World War. M1 Carbine. Lighter and shorter than the Garand, the M1 Carbine was issued to officers, paratroopers, vehicle crews, and support personnel who needed a compact weapon. Chambered in the intermediate .30 carbine cartridge, it lacked the range and stopping power of the full-size Garand, but offered easier handling in tight spaces. Paratroopers of the 82nd and 101st Airborne Divisions jumped into Normandy with folding stock M1A1 carbines strapped to their legs. In the hedgerow country behind the beaches, its lightweight and 15-round magazine made it a practical choice for close-range engagements. Lee-Enfield No. 4, Mk1. The British and Canadian forces who stormed Sword, Juno, and Gold Beaches carried the Lee-Enfield No. 4 Mk1 as their primary infantry rifle. This bolt-action rifle held 10 rounds in its detachable box magazine, double the capacity of the German Kar 98K. Trained British infantrymen could fire the Lee-Enfield with astonishing speed, delivering what was known as the Mad Minute, up to 30 aimed rounds in 60 seconds. Its smooth bolt action and generous magazine capacity made it one of the finest bolt-action combat rifles ever produced. On the beaches of Normandy, it proved itself once again. Springfield. By D-Day, the M19903 Springfield had been largely replaced by the M1 Garand as the standard infantry rifle. However, it still saw significant service in the hands of designated marksmen and snipers. Fitted with telescopic sights, the Springfield's bolt-action precision and powerful .30-06 cartridge made it an excellent long-range weapon. Some units also carried unscoped Springfields as supplementary arms. On the bluffs above the beaches, American snipers armed with Springfields engaged German positions with carefully placed shots that helped suppress defensive fire during the critical early hours. Carabiner 98K, Kar 98K. On the German side, the Kar 98K was the standard infantry rifle defending the Atlantic Wall. This Mauser action bolt-action rifle, chambered in 7.92 57mm, was accurate, reliable, and well-built. However, its 5-round internal magazine and manual bolt operation put it at a significant rate of fire disadvantage against the semi-automatic M1 Garand. Despite this limitation, in the hands of experienced Wehrmacht and SS soldiers, firing from fortified bunkers and trench lines, the Kar 98K was devastatingly effective. Many Allied soldiers never saw the shooter who fired on them from above. Gewehr 43, G43. Germany's answer to the semi-automatic rifle problem was the Gewehr 43. Chambered in the same 7.92 57mm as the Kar 98K, the The G43 offered semi-automatic fire from a 10-round detachable magazine. It was issued in limited numbers to frontline units and designated marksmen. While it never achieved the widespread distribution of the M1 Garand, German soldiers who carried it on D-Day had a notable firepower advantage over their bolt-action-equipped comrades. Its presence on the battlefield was relatively rare, but significant where it appeared. Submachine guns, close quarters firepower. M1A1 Thompson. The Thompson submachine gun was already legendary before D-Day. Firing 45 ACP from 20 or 30 round magazines, the Tommy gun delivered heavy, close-range firepower that was ideal for clearing bunkers, trenches, and buildings. Its rate of fire, around 700 rounds per minute, could overwhelm defenders in confined spaces. Paratroopers, Rangers, and NCOs carried the Thompson into the most intense fighting of June 6th. It was heavy and expensive to produce, but no soldier who carried one ever questioned its stopping power. M3 Grease Gun. The M3 was designed as a cheaper, simpler replacement for the Thompson. Stamped from sheet metal and firing the same .45 ACP cartridge, it looked crude but functioned reliably. Its slower rate of fire, around 450 rounds per minute, actually made it easier to control in automatic fire. Tank crews, vehicle operators, and some infantry units carried the grease gun on D-Day. It lacked the Thompson's prestige, but it did the same job at a fraction of the manufacturing cost. Sten gun. British and Canadian troops carried the Sten gun in enormous numbers on D-Day. This 9mm submachine gun was the definition of wartime simplicity. Made from stamped metal and welded tubes, it could be manufactured for roughly the cost of a good meal. The Sten was reliable enough in most conditions, though its side-mounted magazine was prone to feed failures if not carefully maintained. Despite its rough appearance, it gave every squad automatic fire capability at close range. Commandos, paratroopers, and regular infantry alike relied on it during the Normandy landings. The German MP-40 was one of the most recognizable submachine guns of the war. Chambered in 9mm parabellum and fed from a 32-round magazine, it was compact, controllable, and effective at close range. German NCOs and paratroopers defending the Normandy coast used the MP-40 to devastating effect in bunker defense and counterattack operations. Its rate of fire of around 500 rounds per minute was manageable, and its folding stock made it easy to handle in tight defensive positions. Allied soldiers quickly learned to respect the sound of its distinctive cyclic fire. Machine guns, the killers of D-Day. MG-42. If any single weapon defined the horror of D-Day for the men hitting the beaches, it was the MG-42, firing at a cyclic rate of 1,200 rounds per minute, so fast that individual shots could not be distinguished by the human ear. The MG-42 produced a terrifying ripping sound that soldiers called Hitler's buzzsaw. Mounted in concrete bunkers and fortified positions overlooking every beach, these machine guns created interlocking fields of fire that turned the sand into a killing ground. At Omaha Beach, MG-42 positions inflicted the majority of American casualties during the first wave. A single well-positioned MG-42 crew could pin down an entire company. It was arguably the most feared infantry weapon on D-Day. MG-34. The predecessor to the MG-42, the MG-34 was still in widespread use on D-Day. Firing 7.92-bit 57mm at around 900 rounds per minute, it was slightly slower than the MG-42 but still devastating. More precisely machined and expensive to produce, the MG-34 was reliable and accurate. Many bunker positions along the Atlantic Wall were equipped with MG-34s alongside the newer MG-42s. Together, they formed the backbone of the German defensive fire plan. M19-110A4 Browning. The American M19-110A4 was a belt-fed, air-cooled 30 caliber machine gun that served as the primary medium machine gun for U.S. forces. Firing at around 500 rounds per minute, it was slower than the German MG-42, but extremely reliable and accurate. On D-Day, M1999s were mounted on vehicles, landing craft, and carried ashore by machine gun teams. Once established on the beach, these guns provided the suppressive fire needed to allow infantry to advance toward the bluffs. Bren gun. The Bren was the light machine gun of the British and Canadian forces. Fed from a curved 30-round top-mounted magazine and chambered in .303 British, the Bren was renowned for its accuracy and reliability. Each infantry section carried one Bren gun, giving the squad a base of automatic fire. On the beaches of Normandy, Bren gunners often became primary targets for German defenders because their suppressive fire was critical to forward movement. The Bren was heavy but beloved. Soldiers trusted it with their lives. Browning M2, .50 caliber. The M2 heavy machine gun wasn't carried by individual infantry, but it played a critical role on D-Day, mounted on landing craft, half-tracks, and vehicles that came ashore in the later waves. Its massive 50 BMG round could penetrate light fortifications, disable vehicles, and suppress enemy positions at ranges exceeding a mile. The thunderous sound of the M2 firing from offshore craft provided some of the only covering fire available to soldiers wading through the surf. Its psychological and physical impact on both sides was enormous. Pistols and sidearms, the last resort. 1911 CL. The M1911A1 pistol was the standard American sidearm on D-Day. Chambered in .45 ACP with a 7-round magazine, it had served U.S. forces since before the First World War. Officers, NCOs, machine gunners, and vehicle crews all carried the 1911. In the chaos of the beach landings, where primary weapons could be lost, jammed, or emptied, the pistol became a lifeline. Its heavy .45 caliber round delivered tremendous stopping power at close range. Many soldiers who survived the first minutes on Omaha Beach credited their sidearm with keeping them alive. Webley revolver and Enfield No. 2 revolver. British officers carried either the Webley Mach 66 in .455 caliber or the Enfield No. 2 Mach 1 in .38 caliber. These revolvers were simple and reliable, designed for close quarters use when a rifle was impractical. In the tradition of the British officer corps, many leaders went ashore on D-Day armed with little more than a revolver and a sense of duty. The revolvers lacked the capacity and firepower of a rifle, but in the hand of a determined officer leading men across an open beach, they symbolized something beyond mere weaponry. Walther P-38 and Luger P-08. German officers and NCOs defending the Atlantic Wall carried the Walther P-38 or the iconic Luger P-08 as their sidearms. The P-38 was the more modern design, a double-action 9mm semi-automatic that was reliable and practical. The Luger, while older and more mechanically complex, remained in service and was highly prized as a war trophy by Allied soldiers. Capturing a Luger on D-Day became an almost mythical achievement for American and British troops, and many were sent home as souvenirs. Grenades and explosives, breaking the wall. Mk2 fragmentation grenade. The American Mk2 pineapple grenade was one of the most important tools for clearing fortified positions on D-Day. Its serrated cast iron body fragmented into dozens of lethal shards upon detonation. On the beaches, soldiers used Mk2 grenades to neutralize machine gun nests, bunker apertures, and trench positions that could not be reached by direct fire. Throwing a grenade into a firing slit was often the only way to silence a position without suffering further casualties. Mills Bomb No. 36 grenade. The British equivalent of the Mk2, the Mills bomb had been in service since the First World War and remained the standard British fragmentation grenade on D-Day. Reliable, effective, and easy to throw, the Mills bomb was carried by virtually every British and Canadian soldier who landed in Normandy. Its segmented body produced a lethal fragmentation pattern, and it could be thrown or launched from a rifle using a cup discharger for additional range. Steel hand grenade, German stick grenade. The German steel hand grenade, known to the Allies as the potato masher, was a concussion-type grenade with a distinctive wooden handle. The handle provided leverage for a longer throw than compact Allied grenades. German defenders hurled these grenades from bunkers, trenches, and cliff positions down onto Allied soldiers below. While it relied more on blast effect than fragmentation, its concussive force in enclosed spaces was devastating. Bangalore torpedo. The Bangalore torpedo was not a weapon aimed at enemy soldiers. It was aimed at the obstacles between soldiers and the enemy. This long, tubular explosive charge was designed to be pushed through barbed wire entanglements and detonated to blast a clear path. On D-Day, engineers and infantry used Bangalore torpedoes to breach the wire and obstacle belts that the Germans had laid across the beaches. Without them, entire assault lanes would have remained blocked. The men who carried and placed these charges did so under direct enemy fire, often with no cover whatsoever. Satchel charges and TNT blocks. Combat engineers landing on D-Day carried satchel charges, canvas bags packed with C2 plastic explosive or TNT blocks, designed for demolition of bunkers, obstacles, and fortified positions. These were placed directly against concrete walls, steel doors, or hedgehog obstacles and detonated to blast openings. The engineers who carried these charges suffered among the highest casualty rates of any unit on D-Day. Their mission was simple and suicidal. Get to the obstacle, place the charge, get clear, and blow it. Many never made it past the second step. Specialty weapons, the edge of innovation. M1A1 flamethrower. The portable flamethrower saw limited but terrifying use on D-Day. Carried by specially trained operators, the M1A1 could project a stream of burning fuel up to 40 meters into bunker openings and trench lines. The psychological effect was as important as the physical damage. Defenders who saw flames pouring into their position often abandoned it immediately. However, flamethrower operators were enormous targets. The fuel tanks on their backs made them vulnerable to enemy fire, and a single bullet to the tank could turn the operator into a human torch. The M1 and M1A1 bazooka gave individual soldiers the ability to engage fortified positions and armored vehicles with rocket-propelled anti-tank warheads. On D-Day, bazookas were used against bunker walls, pillboxes, and any armored threat that appeared on the beach. The 2.36-inch rocket was not the most powerful anti-armor weapon available, but it was portable and could be operated by a two-man team. In the absence of tank support during the critical first hours, the bazooka was sometimes the only anti-armor capability available to infantry pinned on the sand. Panzerfaust. On the German side, the Panzerfaust was a single-use disposable anti-tank weapon that required almost no training to operate. Point, aim, fire, and discard. Its shaped charge warhead could penetrate the armor of any Allied tank in 1944. While its primary role was anti-armor, German defenders also used the Panzerfaust against landing craft and concentrated infantry positions. Cheap to produce and issued in large numbers, it gave even the most inexperienced conscript the ability to destroy a tank at close range. Piat. Projector, infantry, anti-tank. The British Piat was an unusual spring-powered anti-tank weapon that launched a shaped charge bomb using a massive internal spring and spigot system. It was heavy, awkward, and required significant physical strength to cock. But its warhead was effective against armor and fortifications, and unlike the bazooka, it produced no backblast, meaning it could be fired from inside buildings or enclosed positions. British troops used the Piat on D-Day to engage bunkers and strongpoints where direct-fire weapons could not reach. Boy's anti-tank rifle. By 1944, the Boy's anti-tank rifle was largely obsolete against modern armor. However, some units still carried it on D-Day for use against lightly armored vehicles, machine gun positions, and fortified firing slits. Its massive 55 caliber round could punch through concrete and sandbag emplacements at moderate range. The rifle's brutal recoil earned it the nickname Charlie the Bastard among British troops. It was heavy, punishing to fire, and outdated, but on a beach with no tanks ashore yet, any anti-armor capability was better than none. Edged weapons and combat knives. bayonet. Every M1 Garand could be fitted with a 10-inch M1 bayonet. While bayonet charges were rare by 1944, the bayonet remained a critical tool for close-quarters combat in trenches, bunkers, and hedgerows. On D-Day, soldiers fixed bayonets before leaving the landing craft, a silent acknowledgement that the fighting ahead would be close, personal, and brutal. Fairbairn Sykes fighting knife. British commandos and special operations forces carried the legendary Fairbairn Sykes fighting knife, a double-edged stiletto designed specifically for silent killing. Developed by two former Shanghai police officers, the knife was balanced for both stabbing and throwing. Commando units that landed on D-Day carried this knife as a symbol of their elite status and their willingness to fight at the closest possible range. It remains one of the most iconic edged weapons in military history. On June 6, 1944, the outcome of the Second World War was carried in the hands of individual soldiers. Every rifle, every grenade, every satchel charge, and submachine gun played its part in breaching the Atlantic Wall. The weapons of D-Day were not just instruments of war, they were lifelines. They were the difference between a soldier who made it across the beach and one who did not. From the terrifying roar of the MG-42 to the quiet click of a bayonet locking into place, every weapon on that beach told a story. And together, they told the story of the day that changed the world forever.